Welcome to Black History Boot Camp. My name is Morgan. I'm joined on the line, co-host, friend, founder of Girl Trek, Vanessa Renee, and we are walking in our neighborhoods. We hope you are walking too. We are rounding the corner to the fall, start of the holidays. Hope that you've had a great time walking these 4 weeks. We're ending on week 4 of Black History Boot Camp, which is a 21-day walking series. Good to hear you, V. How you doing over there?
Same thing. I'm doing good. Walking into the sun right now.
Oh, I'm glad the sun is out. That was Wag the Duck. I love them so much. They're out of Montgomery, Alabama, but I wanted to start with a Southern man vibe because we're talking about a Southern man tonight, today, to morning, wherever you are in the world. And I'm so excited about Black History Boot Camp today. Shall we?
Yeah.
How you feeling? What's going on in your life over there?
I'm feeling great. Actually, I'm feeling great, Morgan. I'm feeling good. I'm just like, there's something in the air.
Your voice is a little muffled.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, your voice is a little muffled. I don't know if it's me. Yeah.
Okay. Let me fix it.
That better? All right, so let's get started. Yeah, that's better. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's get started with today. Today we are talking about none other than one of the heroes, the most underreported heroes of the Civil War. His name is Robert Smalls. And if you're like, Robert who? Robert Smalls. Robert who? Robert Smalls. You should know his name. He famously commandeered a Confederate ship, and I want to tell you all about it. It was the beginning of everything amazing in the Civil War. Some people say that he was the turning point in the Civil War, and I didn't know that much about him, honestly. I knew there was a statue in my hometown.
Can you give us a definition of commandeer? Can we get a definition of commandeer? Because I kind of know that name, but it's fancy. So let's start at the beginning.
Stop acting like you did not go to UCLA. By the way, USC UCLA so bad, and I felt so bad for you, but I had to put it on my own Instagram because we run LA, and I was just like, UCLA is so sad. Such a sad football team. I was just like, I gotta call Vanessa. I was like, Vanessa don't care. I don't care. But commandeering means taking over a ship and being the commander of a ship, commandeering. And he did that with the Confederate ship. We'll talk about it in a second. Robert Smalls, Vanessa, you're about to be so shocked by so many of these details. It's so juicy and so good. Here's how it started. So we know the wars, or the years of the Civil War were in the 1860s, 1861 to 1865, to be precise. Now, we know what the Civil War was fought about, because we've been on Black History Boot Camp. If you're new to Black History Boot Camp, or maybe you're a student, or maybe somebody called you and you're like, I kind of know what the Civil War is about, but I don't. The Civil War was fought for many, many reasons. One of them was figuring out which economy was going to work for this brand new country called America. And was it going to be kind of industrialization, which was, sorry, there's dust on this road here. This man's coming on the road. Industrialization, which is the northern kind of economic system of factories and workers, or was it going to be agriculture, which was farming? And really, farming relied so heavily on free labor, and the free and cheap labor. And the free labor came primarily from the continent of Africa in the form of indentured servitude at first, and then that turned into slavery through something called the Black Codes, right, which made race exist and made Black equal enslaved for the most part. And so that was what we were fighting over. We, with the capital W, meaning America, and I include us in America because we too sing America, as Langston Hughes says. So we were the founding fathers as well. We were there at the beginning. So this was a war that had everything to do with Black people. Some people say that it was a war that was fought over the issue of slavery. That argument could be made as well, but slavery was just one point of the war, and it really was an economic war and a war for identity. Who did we want to be as a people? So what happened in the 1860s is that the United States Army, otherwise known as the Union, started to kind of proceed to unifying the country, and the southern states had a plan to secede from the Union, which was to withdraw their participation in said United States of America. And they did so under the banner of something called the Confederacy. The Confederacy started in Montgomery, Alabama, at Reno, Vanessa, right on the steps there, right by Dr. King's church across the street. That was the seat of the Confederacy. And so the Confederacy was kind of a group. That's what the word Confederacy means, a group of Southern states. South Carolina was one of the strongest states in the Confederacy. So this story today takes place in the great state of South Carolina. Oh, I was going to have a applause track. The great state. So Vanessa, we have a beautiful woman, and she is a Gullah Geechee woman. And if you do not know who the Gullah Geechee people are, you're in for a surprise, I'm going to tell you. Because your girl Morgan been living among the Gullah Geechee people for the last 3 years. So I know a lot about it. So I live in South Carolina part-time, and one of the reasons I moved to South Carolina is because South Carolina feels closer to Africa than any other place in America. Why does it feel closer to Africa than any other place in America? Because there's something called the South Carolina Sea Islands. And the South Carolina Sea Islands is the home to the Low Country Gullah Geechee people nation, if you ask them. And the Gullah people come from West Africa, as high up as Sierra Leone, all the way down to Angola. Some people think that they're called Gullah from Angola. But a lot of them come from Sierra Leone and the coastal regions of West Africa. Why that matters is because the landscape of West Africa is very similar to the landscape of the Sea Islands, Vanessa. So they needed laborers who knew how to farm the land on the Sea Islands of South Carolina, because it's really formidable terrain. Like, it is hard. It's mosquitoes, it's gators, it's all kind of stuff. It's like sandy, it's hard to grow stuff, but the people from places like the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, Ghana knew how to farm in those kind of marshlands with the seagrasses. So they came here and they started planting and farming everything from rice, Carolina gold rice, to indigo, to all of the crops that just flourish in those, to cotton, and all of the crops that flourish in that environment. Well, they made lots of people very rich. And in fact, the biggest, most successful American city in the colonial times was Charleston, South Carolina. And Charleston, South Carolina's wealth came from the Sea Islands. So a lot of the wealthy, they call them planters now in history instead of slave owners. The wealthy planters, AKA, well, I mean, hey, how you doing? I mean, every single historic marker that I look at in South Carolina calls these people planters, but okay. So these slave owners had these giant houses in Charleston, but they had like these vacation homes in places like Beaufort, where I live. All right. And so Beaufort is these really scenic, beautiful, like sea island kind of places. But they would stay on the mainland side of the Sea Islands because it was so treacherous on the island. The heat was hot. The mosquitoes was mosquitoing. Like, the gators was gatoring. And so the white folks was like, we're going to let y'all stay over there and we're going to stay over here. Well, that dynamic, that social dynamic, lasted for hundreds of years. So the people who lived on the Gullah Sea Islands maintained their culture because they were isolated from the white gaze and the influence of white folks. So they maintained and preserved their culture better than any other group of Africans in the entire United States. And a lot of them came from the same places because they needed very specific skill set. So a lot of them spoke Wolof, or a lot of them spoke the different languages. There was a strong Arabic community there that came from places like Senegal, right? And so these people had tight-knit communities, baked languages that were still thriving, isolation, and beautiful landscape. Okay, so this is welcome to the Gullah Geechee community. And so today, if you go to the Sea Islands of South Carolina, you will hear a language that sounds almost like you're in Jamaica, a Creole language called Gullah Geechee language, and it is a mix between languages like Wolof and English, and it is a hybrid, what we call pidgin language or Creole language that is still spoken today. And trust you me, it's beautiful, but you ain't gonna be able to understand it unless you Gullah Geechee, right? And it's a beautiful language. So that is the setting of our story today of the one and only Robert Smalls. So Vanessa, his mother was Gullah Geechee, and they lived right there on Prince Street, right in my hometown of Beaufort. I actually live on St. Helena Island, but Beaufort is the big city. Next to me, it's like a 10-minute drive right past the Walmart. Right past the Walmart. That's what Key Mason asked me. She was like, do you really live in the country? I said, I really live in the country. She was like, how far is Walmart? I said, about 24 minutes. She said, woo, you really live in the country. I was like, so on the other side of Walmart is Beaufort, and Robert Smalls lived right there on Prince Street with his Gullah Geechee mother. And they lived behind the big house of their owners. Now, there is speculation that either the owner or the son of the owner was the father of Robert Smalls. We don't know. That's just speculation, but the mother and Robert lived there, and they treated Robert well. So he was sort of a house servant, if you will. And he had the opportunity to play with like other kids of all races in the neighborhood. I mean, Beaufort was a particular kind of place because of the Gullah Geechee community there, and all of them were free, and they acted like they were free. And so his mother was concerned because Robert had not an easy upbringing. They were owned by the people who lived in front of them, but certainly a sheltered upbringing where he didn't see the hard labor of like St. Helena Island and the plantations. And so she went to the owner, Vanessa, and this is the first kind of controversial. She went to the owner, who we don't know their relationship, and said, I want Robert to see what's really happening to his people. And they sent him to work hard labor on a plantation because she thought it was going to be good for him. I'm curious to know what you think about that decision before we even jump into it. What do you think about
it? It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question because I have a friend who has ascended to like certainly the 1% status of wealth, a Black woman friend, and we were having this conversation around her own children where she was just like, they didn't have the same upbringing that she had, and she was just like, and I want them to experience that, and they wanted to experience it, and yet it's hard authentically to kind of go back and have that experience. It feels like no matter what, you're going to be an outsider, and yet, yeah, no, you got to get out there and see what it is. You got to, I agree with it. You got to go out there and see what it is.
See, I hadn't thought about it. This is why I love talking to you, Vanessa, because I hadn't thought about that way. Because, you know, the history book says that she wanted him to learn how severe it was out on the plantations, but maybe she wanted him to learn his culture. Maybe
right.
She was like,
that's what I'm trying to
there's
say.
a
like,
whole
there's
island
so
of Gullah
many
people. Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason I'm thinking about the reboot, even though it's the Bel Air and the Fresh Prince. But I'm just saying, like, we've talked about this in broader themes, even in terms of like segregation and non-segregation. Like, what does it mean as we integrate, as we aspire? So I had honestly never thought about it back even there that this could have been a possibility because I didn't know the story. But I'm saying, as you told me the story, that's what first popped into my mind, is that she wanted him to actually deeply understand.
That is brilliant. That takes me to our theme for today. And it's loyalty or liberation. Loyalty or liberation. And there's so many applications to that dichotomy. Do you stay loyal to your family, even if that means that you are confined and you're not able to live the kind of life that you want to live? Do you stay loyal to your culture, even though you want to explore the world? Do you stay local and loyal to the people who need you around, or do you go big, broad to a bigger pond and be a small fish? And this dichotomy between loyalty, do you stay loyal in a marriage that doesn't necessarily serve you, or do you liberate yourself? And there is no right or wrong, but how we move and flex in this dichotomy shapes who we are and the levels of freedom that we experience. And so, and it also shapes our moral code, right? And so I'm interested in this story, and it started even with his mom. Like, he was safe there on their little house on Prince Street. he didn't have to go into the plantation right by my house. He didn't have to go to them plantations and like experience that. But she was like, I want him to go experience the liberation of the Gullah Geechee Nation and not just be holed up, loyal to this man and his son and these kids on this block in Beaufort. And I thought it was a brave choice. Well, he went over there, Vanessa, and he just started feeling himself. He was like, I am powerful. That's all. I'm like, let me start with Wag the Duck or Watch the Duck, because the song, the energy of that Black manhood reminds me of Robert Smalls. And so he got over there, it got crunk. He got into a little bit of trouble. He got arrested a couple of times. He a teenager, okay? He a teenager on St. Helena Island or wherever he went to go work. And so his mama said, oh, bring him on back over here. She brought him back over to Prince Street, and she went back to the owner. She was like, I'm going to need you to get him a job out of this environment right here. And this is the 1840s, 1850s, okay? He was born in the 1830s. So Vanessa, when he was 17 years old, he got hired out by his owner to Charleston, the big city. That's about an hour and a half away by road. He got hired out to Charleston. So he went to Charleston, and Vanessa, he immediately fell in love. There is this maid who worked at the hotel. And he was just like, she's so beautiful. And they had the most beautiful love affair. And he started working. He loved, Vanessa has been to St. Helena before. Our whole team has been there. And it's right in the sea marshes with like clams and like dolphins. And it's just quite beautiful, right? So that's what the white people didn't know, that they done gave away the best land. It's quite beautiful out there. And so he's used to waterways and like the tide and tide going in, tide going out. So he had some skills around the water. So when he went to Charleston, he started working in Charleston Harbor. And he was also, a man about himself. He knew how to command respect, right? And he was also very good looking, right? So he get out there, he becomes a longshoreman, as all the fine men do. Like Frederick Douglass was a longshoreman, right? And he becomes a longshoreman out there, which is a trusted position in the Black community, because they are seeing things coming and going. They get the news first. They report back, all the dignitaries who come in, the longshoremen. So it's kind of like the Pullman porters a century later, but the longshoremen were like the men everybody wanted to be with. Like they was like, oh, he a longshoreman, ooh, check. So he had this girlfriend. He was like 17. She was 5 years older than him, Vanessa. So they got married. And she had 2 kids already. And he was like, that's my woman. Like,
that's all right. Look.
First of all, yeah.
First of all, my grandmother.
I already tell you who he is.
Wait, yes, I got to give a shout out to my grandma, because this is a side story. But my grandma had 11 kids when she bagged my grandpa. And I'm just letting you know that my grandpa was like, them 11 kids ain't deterring me. And my cousin Kenya always used to try to shave my grandma and be like, she didn't even have teeth by that time. She had some dentures. And my cousin Kenya was like, what did mama put on papa? That she had 11 kids and some dentures, and this man was like, I'm taking all these responsibilities. And I was just like, don't hate on her, Kenya. She clearly had it going on. So I'm saying, like, shout out to shout out to my grandma.
Yeah, shout out to your grandma, and she did put it on him, and that's amazing to me, and thank you for that sidebar. So he got married, Vanessa, to the one and only, her name was Hannah Jones, and she, just from all accounts, even there's like direct quotes from both of them about each other, and it was just so, I was screen grabbing them and sending them, to whoever, who I sent it to in South Carolina. I was like, this could be you. It's just like, it was so romantic. And so they fell in love, they got married, and they moved in together. Well, she was an enslaved woman. She worked at a hotel as a maid, but she was an enslaved woman. And this is important for us to understand, is that just because you were a slave doesn't mean you were working out in the fields on the plantation, that you could be owned by somebody. In fact, his owner hired him out, and he got $15 a week, I think, and he got to keep $1, and then his owner got the other $14. Vanessa, his owner, right? AKA maybe his daddy, right? And I'm just like, this was that economic slavery. You understand what I mean? And so even though he was functionally kind of free-ish, living in Charleston away from there, which was an honor, I guess, in that time to be trusted with that kind of latitude. But he still was giving, all his money was still going back to that man in Beaufort. So he was still definitely owned. And some of us be feeling like that now. It seems like we free, but we all got quite enough money.
Right.
So he moved in with an old girl, and he and Helen had their first baby, her third child, 2 years after the marriage. But they were living with her owner. They lived in like a little house in Charleston with her owner. And he just knew things were starting to get tense. Now, you have to imagine, Vanessa, remember we talked about Denmark, DC?
Yeah, I do remember. I do. Yes.
So Denmark, DC, in the AME church, remember? And he was trying to start the slave insurrection after the Haitian Revolution. Okay, and then he got killed. He got hung with all the people who were starting the insurrection. And that same AME church, remember, is where that man came and killed all those people just a couple of years ago. Well, Denmark, DC had already put Charleston on the map as the most radical, the most revolutionary city for Black people. So he, hold on, somebody calling me. Oh, girl, let me tell you about this story later. Oh, girl, I'm going to tell you about this story now, because there's some people out there who want to give them a relationship that's just like Helen and Robert Smalls. Okay, so I was dancing the other night, and my mama called me and told me about my auntie, right? My auntie, you guys pray for my auntie. And then I went to the bathroom and I was crying because I have emotions. So I just went and I was crying because I worried about my auntie. And then I had got these fake lashes, right? And so, like, I rubbed my fake lash and one of them got in my eye. And I'm standing on the other side of the party, and I got a lash in my eye. But I'm still crying, so then I look miserable. So this fine little guy, he's like, "You okay?" And I said, "I have a," I didn't say a lash. I said, "I got something in my eye." And he was like, "You need some water?" I said, "Yeah." Vanessa, he ran to get me water, like run, not jog. He ran. No, he jogged, because running would look crazy. But he jogged to get me some water. He comes back and he has a cup and he has the water, and he was just like, "Here you go." And I was like, "I'm supposed to just pour it on my eye in front of you like this?" And he was like, "No, because you're gonna spoil your dress if you do that." And he was like, "But I brought you this cup." And then he poured it in he poured the water in the cup, and he was like, "Just put your eye over it and just open and close your eye." He filled it to the brim, and I put my eye over it, and then I'm looking at him with my other eye. He's looking back at me. And we had like a Disney moment. He's my hero. And while I'm blinking slow in the water, looking crazy, he goes, "How can I see you again?" Anyway, he just called. He's really, really good looking. He just called. Anyway, what was I talking about? Love.
I was about to say Robert Smalls and Helen and love, and how it could attract you and find you in any places, and the care of a Black man for a woman, which is the little story side note that you showed us. So thank you for sharing.
It's the real story of Robert Smalls, and it's why I picked the song I did for the end. It just is. You know, everybody talks about him being like a hero of the Civil War, but like no one talks about his wife, and she was the impetus for all of this. So they're living with her owner. She's enslaved, he's enslaved, but they have some latitude in their lives. And he's like, "I don't want to live here anymore," because this is only 10 years after they hung Denmark Vesey. So you could tell it's popping off. I mean, Black Lives Matter.
It's still popping off there. It's heavy. It's heavy. The energy there is so heavy. Yes.
It is. And so this man was like 23 years old, Vanessa. That's what I need you to just picture in your head. Denmark Vesey had just a decade ago had just been hung for trying to start an insurrection. The Civil War is mounting up, and everybody can feel it. He's on the longshore. He's getting information. His wife is the love of his life. They have 3 kids. And so he tries to think about his options. He was like, "We could run away, but we got these small kids and we're not going to make it far. And I'm not leaving without my children." Then he said, maybe I could buy her freedom. So he went like a whole gentleman, a whole man to that owner. And he said, "I would like to buy my family's freedom." And the man said, "Yes. It will cost $800. He had been working for 3 years straight, saved all of his money, and he had $100. Vanessa, it would take him another decade to be able to earn $800, which is the equivalent of $30,000 today. I looked it up, and like people don't just be having $30,000 just cash money. And I got to do that to like free my family. They don't be having that. So I understand, especially if you work down at the dock. And so he was like, well, that ain't an option. But I know at any given time they can sell my wife. And she's pretty. And like they already don't like how I be standing in my posture. And I done been to jail. Like they can sell my life away. And I can't have that. So meanwhile, he'd been working his way on up. He done learned how to steer. He done learned how to do stuff. He's been on the boat.
This is how people feel right now, Morgan, who are trying to play. I got to interrupt to say this is how people feel right now who are trying to pay restitution, who are trying to pay off them tickets, who's trying to get back their driver's license, who's trying to do XYZ, like the interest rates on that payday loan. Like there are so many scenarios right now where it just feels like, you know what, this math ain't mathing on how my hard work is actually going to catch up with all of these bills and obligations and responsibilities. And that's why so many people right now are outraged, because the incomes that people are making aren't keeping up with the demands either. So it's a lot of energy and feeling around that right now.
Yes. And you think about, you could play it straight and be like, first I'm going to do this cash loan, then I'm going to pay off my student loans, then I'm going to pay off this mortgage, then I'm going to save some money for college for my kids. You could play this straight roll and still one policy change, anything from the law, one thing that happened in your neighborhood and change your property value, one thing. So how free are you really? Like, do you stay loyal to the game or do you liberate yourself? Robert Saul said, I'm going to liberate myself. Vanessa, he learned the trade. He learned every single thing you needed to know about sailing, about being a longshoreman, about flying the mast, doing the little dock work. He learned everything. And he didn't just learn the skills, Vanessa. He earned the trust of all of the men, of all the different races, all the different classes. He was charming. He earned the trust of everybody down there. He worked and he worked. He worked harder, better, stronger than every single body out there. He's young, you know what I mean? And so, and he has something, you know, he got something about him. So he's working with these 3 white men on the ship, and there's about 8 black guys who are working with them because the Civil War was starting to pop off, and Fort Wagner is right there outside of Charleston. And the Civil War started in Fort Wagner, where they tried to the Union tried to come and get it. Then, you know, these militiamen defended it and they was holding it tight. And the Confederacy, they was like, this is the seat of the Confederacy. You ain't taking Charleston. And the Civil War started. That's how it started. And so what happened is the Union went into St. Helena, Beaufort, Hilton Head, that deep bay water port over there. Right down the street from my house, that deep water port over there. And they set up there. That was the next port next to Charleston. They were setting up strategic location. Well, that means where he's at is hot, Vanessa. So hot, in fact, it was the site, X marked the spot for the Civil War. So this man is on the shore, looking out into the bay. And Vanessa, there is a fleet of Union armies in formation right at the horizon line, just surrounding the bay 24 hours a day. Like, I don't care what y'all think y'all gonna do, Confederacy. What you ain't gonna do is get out of this thing. So the Confederacy was like, bet, we got money, we got arms, we got mines. So they started putting sea mines, and it was his job on his ship with those 3 white men, with the brigadier commander and all these other 2 white men, is to go out to get ammunition from Fort Wagner and places like that, bring it back to the soldiers who were really like guerrilla fighters at that time, who were they called themselves the rebels, the Confederates, bring them back arms and weapons, getting them set up with all this stuff. And he was working. So this is what you don't understand, people. You think you ain't going to be on the side of the Confederacy, but you might be on the side of the Confederacy right now. You might be working for a corporation that's killing Black people right now. You might be working, you know, so this was a job. So it wasn't a political statement. He working with the Confederacy. He was doing his job. So he's going out there with these Black men I heard somebody describe the ship as a plantation on the sea, right? Like that they was working out there. And they went out, they got like all these munitions. It was like heavy, 200, 300 pounds. They're lifting it on there, all this stuff, bringing it back. He's watching, he's learning. He's watching the white men on the ship. He's looking at their mannerisms, Vanessa, and he's waiting. And all he can see on the horizon is those Union ships. And he's thinking, if I could just get to them, if I could just get to them, that's where my freedom lies. Well, there's a problem with that. First of all, his family back in Charleston with them.
That's what I was thinking. I was trying to do the math. I was like, wait, what's gonna happen?
He can't go on and do that. No, he ain't gonna be able to do that. He ain't gonna be able to do that. The second hurdle is that the Confederates ain't stupid. They got 5 barricades between the shore and the line, the Union line, right? And one of them is Fort Wagner. It's a whole fort with whole military guns and everything. Ain't nothing about to go down because they are also protecting the city from the Union. So they fortify. You ever watch Sink My Battleship? Like they fortify, right? They're like, you ain't coming up in this thing. So it is a standoff, Vanessa. And so, but he got a plan. Ooh, I love a man with a plan. Robert Smalls had a plan, Vanessa. And this is one of my favorite parts of the story that I read. He said he told 7 other dudes on board about his plan, but he didn't trust the 8th one. He didn't trust the 8th one. And I said, that is a whole word, and that'll preach. You can't trust everybody with your plan, y'all.
You
can't trust everybody with your plan because just like Denmark Vesey, he done told everybody his plan and one of them betrayed him. So he was like, he didn't trust that 8th dude. So, oh no, I asked Ty, I said, what do you think happened to that 8th dude? Like, oh, what happened to him in history? We need to go find him. But so one night, Vanessa, in May 1962, a height of the Civil War. Might have been 1862. It might have been 1861. Let me stop playing with y'all. I wish I knew them dates like you be knowing them dates. I'll be looking at them notes like that. I'll be off the dome. Okay, here we go. Let's start over. May 13th, 1862 is when it all went down, Vanessa. May 13th, 1862 is when it all went down from one Robert Smalls, the most daring escape in all of American history. All right. So they went out on a routine run. They went by different ports, the checkpoints. Now you got to blow the whistle a couple of times. It's almost like Morse code. You got to go do, do, do. You got to know the code to get through, and you got to do the right waves. You got to do the right whistles, and you got to get through the checkpoints, right? And you got to talk to the guards. You got to get through the checkpoints. There's 5 checkpoints. So they spent the morning going through the checkpoints, getting the ammunition. They're laying mines at the bottom of the sea. So in case the Union come, they're going to get exploded. Okay? So he knows where the mines are, by the way. So they did their routine run. They feel a little tired. So they come back to shore. And the 3 white men go onto shore to do some routine partying, is what they say. Read between the lines. I don't know what they were doing on shore, but he knew they was going to be gone for a minute. So they went on shore to do what they was going to do, the 3 white commanders. And before they left, Robert Smalls says, "Attention, sir." Sorry, I'm trying to react, but I don't know words. "Attention, sir, permission to speak, sir." And he was like, "Yes, Robert." 23-year-old Robert said, "Do you think we can have a visit with our families tonight?" And he was like, "Yeah, just make sure that they're back home before curfew," because all of the Black people, free and enslaved, had curfews after Denmark Vesey tried to successfully plan an insurrection and after the Haitian Revolution. He said, "Sure, as long as you get your family back before curfew," is what he says to a grown-ass man. And he says, "Will do, sir." They bring all their families on to board while their 3 white men is out there partying in Charleston. And at curfew, 2 of the other guys pretend to walk the families back, but instead of walking them back to their homes, they walk them back to the North Shore to a dock. And it's about to go down.
Yes.
So then they come on back. Yes, Vanessa. And they would go see if they could just like slide through under the cover of night because it's smoky. But it's a big steamship. It's like a Confederate big like warship, right? So it's loud. It got smokestacks. So he ain't gonna be able to just float it on through, right? So they're gonna have to go head on. Vanessa, he dresses head to toe like a captain. He puts on the straw hat that the white brigadier usually wears, and he tilts it down. Vanessa, he has spotted and studied this man's body language. So he leaned up against the window of the man that Wayman. He held his shoulders and his gait the way man do, right? He leaned up. So they go ahead and floated on by. So when they get close to the first thing, they're like, dup, dup, dup. Smoke set. They knew how to do it, right? He just waved, and they just went smooth on through the first one, Vanessa. Second one, same thing, just went smooth on through it. Third one, same thing. They started feeling themselves, right? And the women is back there praying. No, and then they get nervous because they feel like it's kind of going too good. Now it's 3 a.m, right, when they're doing this, so it's under the cover of darkness. Well, by the time they get to past the fourth one, which was a little bit hairier, past the fourth one, people are shook because the sun is about to rise. And the light is not their friend, right? Because people can see a mile away. If people saw that these were enslaved people trying to escape, they would fire on sight. And even if the captains came back early and the boat was gone, they would send a message. They would fire on sight. Now, there are women and children on here with them. So they are getting nervous. And so by the time they get to the fifth one, it is the most fortified one. They have cannons, and even if they get past it, they could still shoot them down and explode the ship. Now, one of the things I love the most is that Robert Smalls, his wife Hannah, said, he told her the plan first, and she said, even if we die, I want to sink to the bottom of the sea with you. I do not want to be separated from you. And I said, my God, I love this so much. Yes. So they get to the fifth one. Some of the women are crying, not Hannah, but some of the women are crying like, please, we got to turn back. And the men are, because they knew this is the one that is the most fortified and the hardest one. It's the last one to the Union ships. And then they have a problem because when they get to the Union ships, what are the Union ships going to think when a Confederate ship is coming toward them, right? So it was a very dangerous mission. So they get there, almost there, and the men are trying to convince Robert Smalls, you have to go really far away. And just like, so they can't see us, like just try to scoot far away from it. And he's like, no, this is a game time decision. I got to go right up on it, and I got to do the right signs, the right signals, the right horn. I got to wave. I got to play it. I can't try to skirt around it because they're going to shoot us. And he made the decision, game time decision. He went on in there. It went a little hairy. They were scared for a minute. It was a long pause, but then they just waved him through, Vanessa. Ooh, so then they get on into open water. They get into open water and they start pressing on the gas. They open up the steam. I'm about to tell you. They were trying to get to the Union line so they could be free, right?
I know, but just to the Union line, not all the way to Africa.
Just to the Union line, to the Union line so they could get free. They knew that if they got there, they could explain things, they can make themselves useful. So they go there, Vanessa. And as they are speeding up, they take down the rebel Confederate flag, and Hannah had brought a white bed sheet. And they put the white bed sheet up on the mast, and that is the universal sign of surrender. But Vanessa, it was foggy, and the Union couldn't see it. And so they started loading up the weapons, getting the cannons, because there's a Confederate ship coming with landmine ship, mind you, coming straight at them full speed. I don't know if it was an act of God, but the clouds parted just in time before fire, and they saw that bed sheet waving, Vanessa. And they lowered their guns and their rifles. And Robert Smalls and Hannah Smalls and their children and the 8 other Black families coasted on into that Union protection. They declared themselves prisoners of war as enslaved people. And the Union not only protected them, but he gave them the ship. That's why I said commandeer the ship, gave the Union the ship, which was a $1 million possession. And then they not only protected him, Vanessa, they promoted him.
Can I say I love this part of the story because I thought it was going bad. I didn't understand that they was gonna. Okay, like from the beginning of this story, I thought this was. I didn't know this part. I'm happy I stayed. Okay.
Oh, it gets better. They protected him. They promoted him. They made him commander of that ship. He was the one who knew how to drive it better than anybody else. And he joined the Union Army and became a hero in the Civil War, Vanessa. His daring escape with his family was just the beginning. And I'm just going to run over his resume about what happened after, and then I'm just going to open it up for me and you to have just a little bit of conversation, and then we will close today's call. So Vanessa, his family, Ty told me, he said, make sure you tell the people he was going home. And it almost made me cry when he said that, because all he had to do was get to that union, and then he could actually steer the ship back to St. Helena, back to Beaufort, back to where his mother was. It's a short ride over there, but he could not travel that as an enslaved man by ground. He had to travel it by sea. And he ended up going back to Beaufort. And Vanessa, he became so world renowned, Robert Smalls, that he eventually bought his owner's house right there on Prince Street. And today, the Smalls family, his family still lives there. The Smalls still live in Beaufort. They own that house, and the National Park Service is trying to interpret it, and they're like, "Oh no, that's our granddaddy house." They're like, "Oh no, he done bought that house with some stuff." But a couple things you should know about Robert Smalls after he commandeered this ship. He first of all became the first Black U.S. Sorry, I can't even read my own stuff. He returned to Beaufort. He became the first Black U.S. military man to command a U.S. military vessel. He then ran for state representative of South Carolina and won. And then after they won the Civil War, after he did, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 like very significant battles where he led. It was like a cha-cha-cha, which was like kicking ass and taking names. Like, he was like an actual legitimate war hero at like 26, 27 during the Civil War. He came back, and remember what happened after the Civil War, Reconstruction. Well, Robert Smalls is the face of Reconstruction, because he helped to start the Republican Party in South Africa, which was Abraham Lincoln's party. Then he served in South Carolina's House of Representatives, the first Black man. Then he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. He was the first Black U.S. congressman. Hiram Revels was the first, but he was a part of that first cohort. And so Robert Smalls was in the first cohort of Black congressmen during Reconstruction in 1874. In Congress, he started fighting for legislation for the Freedmen's Bureau and Black freedom. And then after 1877, when Reconstruction was ended because the Ku Klux Klan started trying to murder all Black people, with Jim Crow laws, he saw the construction of Jim Crow laws, and he started to fight them directly. He helped to start the first public free school system in all of South Carolina. He was the person who started it. He advocated for all kinds of rights, even in the tension of South Carolina. He testified before Congress to advocate for fair pay and pensions for veterans of the Civil War. And he lived a long and storied life, and at age 75, he passed away in his home that he bought. And I just feel so honored. And today, you remember that park ranger we met with the tattoos? At the Penn Center? Yeah, he was the park ranger for Robert Small's Reconstruction era home. He became the park ranger there. So even today, people are giving tours of his home. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew the story of Robert Smalls. And let's see, what time is it? We're 45 minutes.
First of all,
in.
yes to the man who is just like, I'm taking my family to freedom. I'm going to figure out how to work this boat. Like, the story has so many layers to me. It is genuinely a love story at its core and its heart. And it's almost like back to the feet to the prayers conversation we're having, where like he really was like, what is it that I need to do? What is it that I need to learn? And then even the game time decision to be like, no, I'm going to go straight through. Like, I love this story, and like that level of like leadership and love. Yeah.
Look, I do too. And I also love to think about the frame loyalty or liberation. Like, what are you loyal to now that like is actually hampering your liberation? You know, like you could be in love and free and living up in the house of your dreams on the bay with your mama and them and your Gullah Geechee culture, but you being loyal to this job, or you being loyal to this system that's trying to keep y'all oppressed, or maybe you got that little house with Hannah and you think, or to your fear. Like, what are you being loyal to when you really should think about your liberation? Like, I really love that. And I was actually this morning thinking about you, Vanessa, your mom and your grandmother. And I think every generation like went after their liberation they went
They
after
did.
it in your family. Like, yeah, and my family too. And I want all the listeners to think about, like, are you getting after your own liberation? And like, when should you be more loyal? And when should you be more liberated? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, because sometimes we got to stick in it. Sometimes we got to stick by people's side. Sometimes we got to stay in our community just for a little bit. I mean, it was probably hard the first couple of years that they were married, and he stuck in there. And then he decided to liberate his family. So I love this story so much for this. But let's end. Let's keep it short. Let's keep it sweet. Any final words for you, V?
Yeah, I was just thinking about your question around the loyalty or liberation, and just like my thoughts on it, because this actually is even, our Tubman doctrine, never ask permission to save your own life. I was just thinking for my own self, like, as much as I'm a deeply loyal person to my friends, to my family, to all sorts of things. And at the end of the day, I know when to cut and run. Like, I really kind of do. Like, I know when, like, at the end of, and I don't mean like cut and run, but I just mean I know when to choose myself. Like, I have genuinely chosen myself when it mattered in many ways, like when it was unpopular, when I thought it was going to be ridiculed, all sorts of things, because I'm just like, no, I have to go towards like something deeper and something that I believe. And I was just thinking, like, I have a deep loyalty to my own self. And at the times in my life where I was super self-sacrificial have been the times in my life where I like struggled or suffered the most. So like, I'm just thinking about like having a deep loyalty to ourselves, and to like the care of ourselves, and to the protection of ourselves, and to like our well-being in a way that I don't think we always have.
I love that. I was thinking about you. I mean, you've been my friend for like 20 years, and I was like, you've done some brave things. But maybe the bravest thing you did was go to college. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, trying to get on the straight and narrow. Like, I'm just like,
no, it is.
Like, yeah. And then I think about your mommy, and I'm like, she was so brave in so many ways that we don't even need to recount. But almost like her with her little dog, like, living in her apartment, like just living on her terms. It's like, feels so brave to me. It's like not always the big things, like, the big headlines that we would say, like doing this or quitting that job or leaving that marriage. Sometimes it's the small things where you choose your happiness, or you choose to do something nobody believes you could do. You know what I mean? And I don't know who it was. Yeah. I don't think it was your grandma, but whoever moved up to Seattle, that was brave.
It was my great grandmother. No,
was that your great grandmother?
Yeah, she moved. Yes, and she had to move. She was fleeing. Yeah. She fled during the time where she didn't have any choice but to actually go. But she was all of the women in my family were deeply brave. I do, like, all of the women in our families, I think, are deeply brave. I heard this quote, or this person talking, and they were like, no matter what you can say about your mother, every single woman who came, or your grandmother, or your great grandmother, every single woman who came before you made at least one extra step, traversed one hard road, did one thing to bring you forth in a place where you didn't have to start where they started. Like, even like, no matter what, they put you on the field further away from where they started, and the bravery of their own journey, like, is just something to be celebrated. So yeah.
My grandmother, who I did not have a close relationship with, and rest in peace, Grandma Letha, she was so brave to me because she married my grandfather. And my grandfather was charming and handsome and beautiful, but on their wedding day, her mother beat her because she didn't want her to get married to him. She beat her. Like down the street with a broomstick, like beat her on her wedding day. And the fact that she went forward with that wedding, to me, feels so brave. And they had 11 kids, so apparently they had a spark.
Right.
Apparently my grandma had a spark. And there's something in all of their kids. We just lost our first uncle. They're all living and thriving and just doing well. You understand what I mean? They're all in their 80s, and 10 of them are still alive. Like, the youngest one might be 70, but the oldest one is 92, 93. I mean, and there's still 10 of them that are living. And the one that passed on was a Vietnam veteran. So, and he was wounded. I'm just saying, like, that, to love who you want to love is brave. Even when your own mother doesn't want you to, you know what I mean? So there's so many things that I take away from Black history that, like, is so nuanced and beautiful. Y'all, we got some heroes in our history, and don't let them take it out of classrooms. We have to keep telling our kids these stories. Tell your children the story of Robert Smalls. There's so many books that are about him, like children's books that are about him, and I encourage you to get one today. Just don't order it online. Go get it from your bookstore. Go get it from your local bookstore. But there's so many really beautiful books about him, teenage books and children's books. So I encourage you to get it. That's all I got for today, V. We're going to have some time for recap. We'll open up the lines, and people, if you have thoughts, don't forget them. And as we end and round up the 21 days of walking, we'll be sure to leave ample time for you all to reflect, because these have been deep conversations, and you might still be thinking about the Sade conversation. You might still be thinking about Perry Belafonte conversation. Like, you might still be thinking about, I mean, I've been thinking about so many. I love the Dick Gregory conversation yesterday. So, like, if you have ahas, and I love Benjamin Banneker. I felt like I could do anything after that story. Like, I just really loved it. So, like, thinking about like how these stories have touched you, or any epiphanies you have, or any applications to your life, start to think about that. We will open the lines in the next few episodes so that you all can talk. Without further ado, we'll talk to you later. We're going to end with that new Kendrick. I love Kendrick Lamar. I couldn't play half of the songs because they were so Kendrick. I was like, Kendrick, we can't play this on air. But there's one with SZA that I thought was really beautiful. We'll end with a love song. So we'll play that, and have a great day, everyone.